This is my 4th year in a row of doing this video, and much like in previous years, I really don't know how to go about doing it. On top of that, the freaking week I've had, and now I have to do this, which has both mentally prepared me and mentally made me the least prepared I've ever been, probably for any video of this magnitude. But this is a story that I get to tell. I like to believe that I am a man of conviction for doing this. So, like it or not, ready or not, here I go. I've made it no secret in the past that I contemplated suicide. And I'll be talking more on that tomorrow. However, up until 2021, I never revealed why that was. And since 2021, I felt explaining why I contemplated suicide, followed by tomorrow's video, what snapped me out of it, since I feel they go hand in hand. I feel that today is the best day to do it. So, I guess there's nowhere better to start than the beginning. When I was very young, I was I felt like I had a normal childhood, just like, anybody else. I was, particularly quiet. I naturally have a straight face, so I don't really smile that much. Even back then, I didn't really smile much as a baby. Listen, no one smiles all the time. I'm pretty sure if a person really was smiling all the time, I would think there'd be something more wrong with that than what I'm about to tell you. But when I was a baby, my mother was giving me, this is the story that I was told, by the way. I was a baby, my mother was giving me a bath, in the sink, because, that's what some parents do. And then walks in my grandmother, my mom's mother. And with little to no context, outside of the fact that, again, I'm not really smiling that much, my grandmother just walks up to my mom out of the blue and kind of rudely and tells her that there's something wrong with me. Now, this would later prompt my parents to send me for testing up at Rochester. And given the fact that I just named the place, I'm thinking some of you know where this is going. Now, for many years after that, no one told me anything. Not a thing. Oh, to me, anyway. I can't speak for, conversations amongst adults, obviously. But the point is, no one told me anything. Never thought anything of it. Didn't have a reason to. That was until I was in 7th grade. Now, I will admit, growing up, I was a little bit raised on the sheltered side. I didn't really know then how to, overcome any kind of adversity or deal with people who were being mean to me. And so one day in 7th grade, these kids were being mean to me, and I said that I was going to kill them. Now, this is 2003. This is a few years removed from the Columbine incident that happened, again, a few years before. I mean, there have been other school violence-related stories that happened at that time, but I think everybody knows that, Columbine, that was the final straw. There's actually still some school-related violence today. And yet, no one really took a major stand until, again, Columbine. For saying I was going to kill you to those kids, who then later snitched on me, more on that later, I got 4 days of in-school suspension. It was actually supposed to be 5, but my mother, got me out of it. Of course, what happened was certain members of the school faculty walked up to my mom and asked my mom if there was something wrong with me. To which my mom said, well, and right there I don't need to answer that, because you guys can already piece together what's happening. Apparently, that testing went back in Rochester at the time, concluded that I was on the autism spectrum. More on that later. And from that moment on, from midway through my seventh grade year till just over halfway through my junior year of high school, I was in special ed, or special education, obviously special ed for short. And I can tell you right now, I was miserable that whole time. Especially being in a room filled with students that, for all intents and purposes, actually did need help. I mean, to this day, I like to say that if you were to see me in, that room, you'd been like, Nick, what are you doing in here? Come on, get out of here. I'm being serious, by the way. And in terms of, socially, I mean, it killed my social life. I mean, no guy is ever going to treat me with, respect. And no girl was ever, going to go out with me. In fact, in 8th grade, being in that room cost me getting a girlfriend. And I'll never forget what happened. So, because I was in special ed, we had the first lunch period, and I was sitting at the table with all the other special ed students. And there was one student in there who, like me, really had no business being in that room either. but apparently he was there because he was also on the spectrum, so there you go. And I forget what he was doing that warranted this, but I called him a retard. It wasn't until I was in English class, and I want to make one thing clear. At the time, there was this girl I really did like, and she did kind of like me, and she was showing signs that, she did like me, but this is like just around the time I started liking girls, and I don't know how to, except for treating a woman right, I really don't know how to, read those signs or, know what to do if a girl wants to hold my hand or whatever. And this girl was in my English class. It was like right at the beginning of English class. And here's the thing. This girl was also choosing between like me and another guy. It was after I got to the English class that they pulled me out to go back to the special education room because I called that kid a retard. That kid snitched on me for calling him a retard. Which, where do we even begin with that? Because there's about at least a dozen words I can think of that are worse than the word retard. There are 7 words you're not allowed to say on television and radio. And all of them, with the exception of the 7th one, are worse than retard. And do I even need to remind you that a certain word that no white person should ever say exists? And I want to emphasize this even further. I was going to wait to do this until this guy actually deserved it. But I guess a little sneak peek wouldn't hurt. February 28th, 2019. While I was at work, I called my uncle out for some really egregious bullshit he'd been doing pretty much the entire time I've worked there. He then proceeded to sucker punch me, damaging my ribs in the process, and repeatedly called me a pussy. And I didn't snitch on him. Although, for all intents and purposes, if you're wondering, yes, I absolutely should have. In fact, the only reasons why I didn't is because A, my father told me not to, and B, even I knew that the police don't really handle family disputes. And if you can believe it, that's not the worst thing my uncle's ever done, but that's a video for another day. Hopefully, I never have to make that video. My point is, what my uncle did to me, far worse than me calling this kid a retard. And that kid still snitched on me. Hell, when I mentioned earlier that the kids I said I was going to kill you to, snitched on me, that was bad too, but I at least get that, comparatively. So I get pulled out of that English class, sent back to that special ed room for such a stupid reason. And that girl I like chose the other guy over me. That was the first time I ever truly experienced heartbreak. It was from that moment on, considering I was also about to enter high school, I told myself, after I graduate, I don't want anything to do with horse heads at all. I'll just remain in seclusion. you know, full stop. While I also had to be in special ed during the school year, I was also involved with a program called Summer Science Institute, where I got to take my Earth Science high school course during the summers after my 7th and 8th grade years. So by the time I got to my freshman year of high school, I was already taking Earth Science, which is great. That class was about 3 hours a day. But I and several of the special ed students who were there had to be there longer for more, group time. Which, that was another reason why being a special ed really wasn't good. Because that was also, so being in that room was also supposed to be our study hall, where, we can get work done. And we're not able to get work done because we have, group sessions and processing and basically the sort of thing that's the direct antithesis to working on social skills. I mean, how am I supposed to work on social skills out in the real world if you're not letting me go out in the real world, So, between the fact that I had to put up with my special education, this special education room and faculty for, frankly, I might as well call it 6 years when you add those 2 summers in. Because remember, I didn't do it my senior year. More on that in a second. I figured after I graduate high school, I want nothing to do with horse heads. I certainly am never going to see these faculty members ever again. Because of all of this, I'm not getting invited to any parties. No girlfriend. No, I'm never going to get a girlfriend ever. More on that in a second. I'll be in seclusion. No one's ever going to see me for years, and hopefully enough time will pass so people forget about this sort of thing. That was the original plan until my sophomore year of high school. When my sophomore year of high school really wasn't any good. For one thing, I got cut from the JV football team. I botched my audition for the spring musical, which was Beauty and the Beast, which everybody else got to be in. On top of that, I wasn't put in concert choir, which is the good choir. Now, full stop, by the time I graduated from Horseheads, no doubt I was the best singer of that whole school. However, I worked hard out of spite for the music teacher who didn't put me in that room. His reasoning was I wasn't mature enough. When really I can tell you that a bunch of students who were in the special education room were also going to be in choir that year. So for scheduling purposes, they figured group them all together. I'm sorry. That doesn't just insult my mental capacities, that insults my musical ability. But again, whatever. It was during my sophomore year, I was in health class, and we had to watch a movie called I Am Sam. If you don't know what that movie is, it stars Sean Penn, very good actor, who is on the autism spectrum, and he's working at Starbucks, and he has a kid with some woman who, right out of the gate, just walks out of the picture. Like, she's just gone. No reason why the movie literally doesn't explain why she leaves. And so, Sam, played by Sean Penn, is raising the kid on his own, and for all intents and purposes, he's a good father. This part always gets to me. It wasn't until his daughter was at like a kid's party. I forget what happens in the movie, but Sam gives like an attaboy to one of the other kids or like the birthday boy or something, and then all the parents there just freak out. They just freak out. It leads to a big court case. They're saying that, Sam shouldn't be allowed to raise his kid. And as I was watching this movie, I couldn't help but think, oh my God, there's no escape from this, is there? This autism spectrum shit's gonna follow me wherever I go. There's no way anyone could ever be okay with that. And I certainly wasn't. And it was that's when I started contemplating suicide. Now, in tomorrow's video, I'm going to get into what ultimately saved me from doing so. But all you need to know is, after I stopped contemplating suicide, I went through life not having a clue of what the hell I'm doing. For all intents and purposes, I was simply going through the motions. I mean, I mentioned before that midway junior year, I was deemed no longer need to be in special education, which was great. In fact, by comparison, my senior year of high school was the best year ever. But that really was largely because I was no longer in special ed. Not to mention, the damage had already been done. I mean, I'm a senior, a veritable big man on campus, the best singer of that entire school. And you know what? Normally I really wouldn't say this out loud, but you know what? I'm actually quite proud of this when I think about it. I was a top 3 overall athlete at that school. Nobody was ever going to give me the satisfaction or give me the respect I deserved, because they knew me as being in that special education room. Do you have any idea how degrading it is to be a senior and you have freshmen and veritable other underclassmen calling you Rain Man? I've never even seen that movie. That's not even fair. Pretty much any insult I could have been given, I got it. Like, no girl is ever gonna like me. I was the condom that my father forgot to put on. I was the abortion that should have been planned but wasn't. So yeah, now it's becoming more and more obvious why I wanted to kill myself. So I'm sure some of you guys are wondering, why would I even share this? Especially when, for all intents and purposes, as I mentioned earlier, I was going to wait a few years and maybe people forget, and I could move on. I was pretty much going to take this story to my grave, if we're being honest. The reason why I didn't is because as of 2021, I learned some rather shocking news. Now, I really had been searching for a career change for a long time. I'm sorry, I'm sick. Yeah, bear with me. So it turns out that there are services that can actually facilitate, finding a job. I just had to swallow my pride and come clean about the fact that I was, keyword there, was on the spectrum. Now, obviously, you can't just walk up to said services and say, hey, look, I'm disabled, please give me a job. It doesn't work that way. Even I know that. Even I knew that going in. They actually have to, do some tests to confirm that, okay, he is disabled, get in, let's help him find a job or whatever. Now, I go through several various tests. They ask me a couple questions like face association with emotions, some math questions, try to, in my own words, name definitions of things as best as I can, all that jazz. It turns out that what's really wrong with me is that I have a combination of depression and pragmatic communication disorder. Now, depression, pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I really need to explain much of what that is. In terms of pragmatic communication disorder, it varies from person to person. For me, it really is as simple as I'm really not the best at making eye contact. I mean, I swear I'm a great conversationalist. I just suck at making eye contact. And admittedly, I do have a problem, saying a few things under my breath. I do get mad easily. I'll admit that. I do. But my point is, neither one of those things have anything to do with the autism spectrum. I was age 31 when I got this diagnosis. Now, I want to make one thing clear. When I first heard that I was no longer on the spectrum, believe me, it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like, I really felt like I could breathe again. But then, and this really has to do with both the depression and the pragmatic communication disorder, I couldn't help but think of roughly 30 years of depression, rejection, contemplations of suicide, feelings of worthlessness or inadequacy, the belief that my brother was the favorite child. I mean, listen, my brother was obviously never put in special ed, and right now he's married with 3 beautiful children. So, pretty sure I'm, pretty sure that has something to do with it. I mean, honestly, full stop, I'm very well convinced that my brother's constitutions are even weaker than mine. I guarantee you, if he's in that room, if he was ever put in special ed, he's not married with 3 beautiful children. Okay? I'll say that much. All of that, and it turns out I never need to go through any of that whatsoever. So, I mean, and I'll share this more on Sunday, but there were some good things that did happen when I was in horse heads. Again, I mentioned I was a top 3 overall athlete, and that really was due to a lot of hard work I did put in. And, I did win the Shining Star Award for all of my accomplishments with my singing. I mentioned the whole not getting a concert choir in earlier. Here's how bad this was. There were kids who exclusively did band that whole year, never having once sung in any choir, and they got in over me. Again, I find that really insulting to this day. And for 3 weeks, I actually did have a girlfriend. Of course, that's because she went to a different school than I did. She had no idea what was going on in Horseheads. Actually, this is how long ago it was. This is 2007. This is back when it was Corning. See, now Corning is known as Corning, but back then it was Corning East and Corning West. This girl went to Corning East. Yeah, that's how long ago it was. Crazy, huh? And again, it was only 3 weeks. She broke up with me over a text the day after my birthday. But you know what? I can say I had a girlfriend at least once. Haven't had one since. Full stop. I haven't kissed a woman since March of 2013. But I can share that because I get to. So there's that. More on that on Sunday. So, in regards to, the people in Rochester who originally diagnosed me as being on the spectrum when, clearly I wasn't. I mean, again, 30, all that time ago, Rochester got the diagnosis wrong. So, believe me, there really was a time when I really was mad at them. In fact, I would have said, forget Rochester. Those people are idiots. Don't even bother going to them. If you do go to them, you're an idiot. I was saying all that stuff. I will admit that. In fact, even after I graduated college, there were still some problems. I will never forget this. This is about a few weeks after I graduated from Gettysburg College. My brother was in town. And actually, you know what? I'll go back to that in a second. In regards to the people in Rochester, listen. I'll also admit, 34 years old that I am right now. I'm about to 35 at the end of the month, and there's still no cure. This is exactly the thinking that was going on back then. Now, listen, there are people who legitimately do need help. If you have a child who is on the spectrum, yes, please, just go to Rochester. Please do. There is a reason why, that place is considered an authority on the matter. One could even make the case that they are the authority on the matter. Honestly, this really is one of those rare instances where the best got it wrong. The best made a mistake, which does happen every now and again. Patrick Mahomes doesn't have a great football game. Aaron Judge doesn't have a good baseball game. LeBron James isn't always consistent with his basketball play. Again, everybody makes mistakes, even the very best. I just wish this didn't happen at my expense is all. Now, at this point, it should be obvious, I'm absolutely pissed at the special education faculty I had to deal with. Especially when I'm convinced, because here's the thing. This is something I didn't mention yet. Like, those faculty really at the time were like the most boring, one note, like, it really did seem as if they didn't care that they were there at all. Not even, listen, I like to believe that maybe at some point during their careers they did care. More on that in a second. But I didn't really see it when I was there. In fact, a while back, I looked at one of my old yearbooks, just because I was bored. And I happened to look up the faculty the faculty member I had to deal with in high school. Oh my God. That teacher's smile looks so incredibly fake. Oh my God. It was the fakest looking smile I'd ever seen. And I had to put up with that for junior 2.5 years. Remember, it was high school, and high school started freshman year, it was junior year. Actually, I had to see her during Summer Science Institute, so yeah, might as well be 3.5 years. It's actually another reason why I'm really glad for Trinity Poly, because with Trinity Poly, I definitely got one of those years back. It's still outnumbered like 5.5 to, 2.5, but still. So, yeah, I'm mad at the faculty I had to deal with. And it's even worse when you stop to consider the fact that the mentality that those faculty had back then, I really am convinced has rubbed off on my generation. I'll never forget this story. This is what I was about to allude to earlier. It was a couple weeks after I graduated from college. My brother was in town, and he went to go see some of his old friends from Notre Dame High School. My brother went to Notre Dame High School, I went to Horseheads, obviously. And he asked me to tag along because he's cool like that. Yeah, I know I mentioned my brother has weak constitutions, but you know what? He really is a good guy, a good man, a loving and supportive husband and father. My brother, he's a good guy. He is. I don't say that nearly as often as I should, but he is. And if you ever got to meet my brother, if some of you guys already know my brother, and you already know, but if you ever did meet my brother, you'd think he was a pretty good guy too. So we're at this party that my brother tagged me along in, and we're having a good time. People had a few drinks, and I didn't drink because I was the designated driver. Some people had a few drinks and we're laughing, having a good time. And I kid you not, literally the hostess of the party. This is at her place. She was working with special ed students over the summer. And I can't remember the exact thing she referred to them as, but it was something akin to little retards. You're a teacher to these students, and you're calling them that. And I know some of you are going to say, well, Nick, you just mentioned that, there was drinking involved. Everyone had a few. Maybe she just said that because she was drunk. Perhaps. But there are 3 kinds of people who will always be honest. Angry people, children, and drunks. They are the three people who will always be honest. So there you go. When she referred to those students as little retards, everybody started laughing. And seeing as how this was the time that, I didn't want people to know about my past, I want people to forget that I was in special ed, I laughed along with them. That was the first time I ever sympathized with my oppressors. All of that, and believe me, there was a time I would say, if your son is involved with special education faculty, then pull them out right now. You really should have nothing to do with them, etc., etc. Over time, though, I've come to the conclusion that, the belief that, because I really do hope with all my heart of hearts, that there are good people out there that actually want to do this. They went through all the necessary, certification and training and schooling that they were able to achieve the job of their dream job. And not only did they achieve this dream job of working in special education, they're able to make a living. They're able to put food on the table, feed their families, pay bills, keep a roof over their head. If any of them have kids, pay for their kids' college fund, I suppose. They're able to make a living. Whether it's special education faculty or straight up the people, in Rochester that really are good people that help others. And they just have a diagnosis wrong with me. For me to take that away from any of them would make me no better than the oppressors that I sympathized with. And then there's my grandmother. Full stop. Years before I was born, my grandmother had actually hit her head really badly. The kind of head injury that really did change her personality to pretty much the personality that my brother, myself, and all my cousins knew her as. My mother actually knew that when, my grandmother walked up to her and with very little context other than I'm not smiling, that there's something wrong with me. And my mother still did nothing about it. Later, my grandmother, first of all, I have a bunch of friends who are moms. And they all wear that like a badge of honor. I guarantee you, not one of them would ever take that sitting down. I know it's coming across that's making my mom look bad, and yeah, it definitely does make her look bad. But on the one hand, I do kind of get it. Maybe she didn't want to argue with her mom or whatever, I don't know. But, I mean, if you're a mom and you're watching this, what would you do? I mean, me personally, knowing what I know now, I would have told that woman to stay away from my kids, stay away from me, I never want to see you again. Well, that's just simply having experienced what I experienced. Maybe someone has a better idea, I don't know. Turns out my grandmother would later get diagnosed with dementia, and she would later pass in this Saturday before Memorial Day 2023. So it's been over a year and a half since she's passed, which I find rather ironic that the very person who ultimately changed the course of my life by saying there's something wrong with me. Ultimately, I had something with her. There's a metaphor there somewhere. You know, the one thing I can say is, before I learned about all this, yeah, I did have good times with my grandmother. She really was a nice lady. She was. You know, I actually got to scatter her. I was able to fulfill her wish earlier this year by going to Colorado, the top of Shrine Pass, and scattering her ashes. I fulfilled her wish. You know, believe me, a part of me really didn't want to do that knowing what I know now. But I did it anyway. Because, you know what? Maybe it's because, you know, it makes me a better person for respecting the wishes of the dead, or maybe I need a repeat of Colorado, considering the last time I was there was complete garbage. Whatever. And speaking of garbage, you know, again, it's no secret that the special education system is complete garbage. In fact, it's been that way for many years at this point. But I do still believe that there are good people out there that are working as special education teachers, and for all intents and purposes, they're living their best life. In terms of my grandmother, there really isn't much I can do. I don't think I'm ever going to get over this, considering it was just the start of roughly 30 years of complete bullshit. But at least the last time I saw her, seriously, the last time I actually saw her was my brother's wedding. And I had a good time with her, so yeah, I guess I was able to see her as she was before the dementia hit, I suppose. I'm sure if this is your first time hearing all this from me, it's a lot to take in, and there is a lot to process. So I want to end this with as about high of a note as possible. About a year later, after I got the proper diagnosis and was no longer listed as anyone on the spectrum, I watched a stand-up special from one of my all-time favorite comedians, Ron Funches, who also has a son who is on the spectrum. The special was called The Giggle Fit. It's actually a really funny stand-up special. I highly recommend you check it out. When he got to talking about his son, he mentioned that he was on the spectrum, and he said, if you know someone, or if you live with, I'm paraphrasing here, or live with someone who is on the spectrum, then congratulations. You've been chosen to take care of a beautiful soul. You know, even if I was still on the spectrum, even back then, I definitely would have disregarded it. But you know what? I never got to hear any of that, which sucks. You know, we actually live in much better times than when I was a kid. And we have come so very far. But even I can acknowledge we have still so very far to go. Well, that's about it. This video is well over 50 minutes long, and again, this is going to be a lot to take in for some of you, especially if this is your first time watching this. But as you'll find out in these next few videos, especially tomorrow, is a story that I get to tell. And while it's not always easy for me to do this, I become more and more proud with each year I do it. So, if you stuck around this long, thank you. I am actually humbled I was able to share this with all of you today. I'm hopeful that, some of you take this positively, and if you're feeling depressed, maybe this will help you in some way. And if any of you are having any problems at all, even if they have nothing to do with what I just did today, if you want to talk, I'll do what I can to listen and help you. So, take care, everyone. Make good choices. Oh, see you tomorrow.